traffic on runway 1 will serve intersection.
These are radio communications with the air traffic control tower at Reagan National Airport on Wednesday night. This is one of the last messages from American Airlines Flight 5342.
Tower 5342 on Mount Vernon visual runway 1.
The passenger jet and an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided over the Potomac River, killing 67 people. To understand why they collided on a clear night in a highly controlled airspace, we examined footage and aviation charts, synchronized flight tracking data, and publicly available radio traffic with material from investigators, and verified a leaked recording of what the air traffic controller would have seen. What we found was a system that put pilots on tight, crisscrossing flight paths, and a control tower with what the FAA called abnormal staffing that left one controller responsible for both helicopter and plane traffic. Compounding this was altitude data displayed on antiquated monitors that only update every 4 to 5 seconds. Reagan National is one of the most congested airports in the US. Adding to the complexity, experts told The Times, are the intersecting runways used for both flights taking off and landing, along with the stream of military helicopters flying by. Here's what was happening over the course of the 5 minutes before the midair collision. The air traffic controller is juggling 2 jobs and multiple planes and helicopters. At 8:43 p.m., as Flight 5342 is descending toward Reagan National preparing to land, we hear the controller ask the pilot to change runways from the main runway, number 1, to runway 33.
Lucia 5342, Washington Tower 1 star 32017, gust 25, you take runway 33.
Runway 33 is a short runway that smaller planes use frequently, but it requires a trickier approach from the east side of the Potomac River.
Yeah, we can do 33 for Lucia 5342.
2.5 minutes later, the Black Hawk helicopter is about 7.5 miles away, also flying along the river at a much lower altitude on a training mission. The controller alerts the Black Hawk to look out for Flight 5342, which is coming in for a landing on runway 33.
Cat 25, traffic just off the Wilson Bridge is here today at 1,200 feet, start runway 33.
The controller calls Flight 5342 by its model number, CRJ. The helicopter uses the radio call sign PAT-25.
Visual separation.
Visual separation means the pilot is assuming responsibility for steering clear of other aircraft, rather than relying on directions from the air traffic controller. The Black Hawk is flying in a corridor set aside for helicopter traffic where pilots are required to fly below 200 feet. That corridor crosses the route that planes use to land on runway 33. Planes fly at a higher altitude, but they are descending to make the runway, leaving a margin that can be less than 200 feet, which in the world of aviation is unusually and perilously tight. Footage appears to show the Black Hawk slightly increasing and decreasing its altitude, and preliminary findings from investigators suggest the helicopter crossed above the 200-foot ceiling in the corridor. Helicopter pilots told The Times this is not unusual. At 8:47 p.m., the Black Hawk is still flying head-on toward Flight 5342. In the tower, a conflict alert goes off on the radar scope, signaling that the Black Hawk and Flight 5342 are too close. In general, conflict alerts are frequent and continue to go off even when impending danger has been resolved. But the controller again asks the Black Hawk if it sees a CRJ, referring to Flight 5342, and directs the helicopter to fly behind it.
Pass 25, get the CRJ in sight. Pass 25, pass behind the CRJ.
The Black Hawk once again requests visual separation.
This cloud has an aircraft in sight, press visual separation.
On the radar screen, it shows the Black Hawk's altitude at 200 feet and the plane at 400 feet, suggesting there's a 200-foot margin. Then both converge at 300 feet. Seconds later on the radio, there's an audible gasp in the air traffic control tower.
Star 1 star 32017.
The causes of the collision are still unknown. There were a lot of aircraft in the airspace. It's unclear if the Black Hawk had visibility on Flight 5342 or another bigger passenger jet that was also approaching the airport from the south. Light, distance, and speed can create visual distortions in the sky, especially if the helicopter pilots were wearing night vision goggles, which is one factor investigators are examining. The NTSB has said that right before the crash, the crew inside 5342 was heard reacting to something, and the plane pitched upward. Now, as recovery efforts continue, the FAA has restricted helicopter traffic along the Potomac and raised the altitude levels for planes landing at Reagan National, an airspace that one pilot based there told The Times exemplifies the pressures that are pushing the U.S. air safety system to the brink.